Well, I'm really glad everybody is here. We appreciate you joining us, whatever way you are joining us today. And we're going to start with kind of a little just question for discussion. So on the screen here you'll see, and then on the team screen you should see, this is a question for you to consider. Which describes you best? Do you like to learn by listening, reading, or viewing, doing, you don't have a preference, or something else? So think about that for a minute and then discuss it with somebody near you if you're here, or those people on Teams. Maybe put your thoughts in the chat. So we'll take just a couple minutes to do that while you're eating and getting settled, those of you here. All right, so I heard some good discussion going on here, and I saw some good thoughts that people shared in the chat. So it looks like a lot of people in the chat like to learn by doing or by visuals and reading. How about those of you here? What do you prefer?
I think I'm a mixture of like viewing and then doing.
Mm-hmm. That's fine too.
Viewing and doing?
Visual. Mm-hmm.
Does anyone like to learn best by listening? Okay, yeah.
Getting there. Yeah.
So my sister homeschools my nieces and my nephew, and they are all very much auditory learners. So they listen to books on tape, they listen to textbooks. So they very much, as a family, enjoy that. I cannot listen to an audiobook because my mind just wanders. Like that's not how I learn.
Audio Bible and try to visual,
Yeah, try to imagine it.
Yeah, so I like
Yeah.
to go with my dad.
Yeah.
Visuals and listening.
Well, and we're all different, and that's kind of why I wanted to start with this question, is because when you're thinking about presenting or reaching an audience, it's important to remember that we all kind of have different preferences. So, yep. So we're going to do the best we can to try to reach people in as many different ways as we can, and part of that is the reason why we have visual aids. Now, when you think about kind of those speeches, if you think about speeches that were really meaningful, a lot of times people will think about when George Bush was the president on 9/11 and he climbed on top of the rubble and spoke through a megaphone. No visuals. I mean, obviously that was a visual picture there of what actually had happened, but he didn't have a PowerPoint, didn't really have a good microphone system, but it was powerful without the aid of any of those kind of things. But for most of us, if we're in a situation where we're presenting, if we can have some kind of support, particularly visual support, that's going to help us reach more people in our audience. So something for us to keep in mind. All right, so I wanted to quickly give you a feel for what we are going to do in terms of this workshop. We're going to talk quickly in part one about choosing a visual aid, just kind of looking at different types. Then we're going to play a which one and why game. People on Teams, you can participate as well. And then we'll talk about online tools and resources, which I think is kind of how I got y'all here, except for I think there's a lot of my students on Teams, so hi, Com231, Emily Moore students, we're glad that you're here. So that's what we're doing. And I don't think it was a little bit with the in and out with Teams and in here, I don't know that I said, I'm looking down at the computer. We're all still learning how to present with the virtual kind of situation. So virtual people, my name is Emily Moore, and I'm presenting this workshop today. We're really glad that all of you are here. It is on Polish Your Presentations. That third part, I think, is kind of how I lured many of you here with the idea that we're going to talk about some tech tools that can help. So that'll definitely be a part of it, and we'll leave some time for questions. All right, any questions actually before we get going in part one? Or in the chat? All right.
No questions.
Thank you, Dr. Mercer. Okay, so here's part one, choosing a visual aid. Now, these next few slides are all coming from something called Canva. Have any of you heard of Canva? No? In the chat, anybody, or on Teams, anybody heard of Canva? No. Yay, I'm going to show you something that you don't know today. So you'll get something valuable out of this, I hope. All right, so Canva is my go-to when it comes to creating presentations. It's so simple. Also, you can create flyers, anything, because it is pretty much just designed by graphic designers for those of us who are not graphic designers. So we can just kind of open it up. It's free. Now they do have elements of it that you do have to pay for, but it's optional to pay. I have had it for probably maybe 7 years, and I've paid for one thing. So I've spent $1, and I've used this. I probably use it for every presentation I've done since 7 years ago. So it's great. So this is from a template that they have in Canva. So when you open Canva, you can choose what kind of project you want. So this is a presentation project, and you choose a template. So this came straight out of that template, which is why I have source Canva here. I didn't change this at all. This is something that's already in the template that you can pull out and use and adapt. That's why it has start project twice, because they're just giving you an idea of the fact that you can put your own info in this. So this is one option. This is a timeline, but this is a type of visual aid that you might use if you were presenting something where you needed people to know kind of how things happen in order. Yep. A consecutive, things that happened in a particular order in time or place. This is a different looking pie chart or graph, right? Because normally we see the circle, then we see like the little piece of the pie. This is just a different way of presenting that, but this is still a pie chart, pie graph. And in this template by Canva, they're suggesting, hey, you could use this to show percentage of total sales. Here's another way you could show product sales. This is again a template just from Canva. Does anybody know what this type of visual is called? Visual aid. Yes, this is very good. You're such a good class. Maybe on Teams you're putting it in the chat as well. This is a bar graph, and so this is a way you can display when you need to compare items. So here we're comparing in this sample that Canva created different sales of different types of clothing items over time. This looks more like what you're used to with the pie chart, right? So this is another, again, this is straight from Canva. They're just suggesting, hey, if you want to use this template, you could show what percentage of the total sales were each type of clothing item. And then this is a line, oh, I was going to ask you. Spoiler alert, this is a line graph. So this is what you're going to use if you're trying to compare items, but also show over time trends, whether maybe they increased or decreased over time. So Canva's saying, hey, you could show your revenue with this. This is kind of, there's another category, so I'm kind of going through different types of visual aids, and this is kind of in its own category. There's a kind of general category that we just call like visual aids, graphic organizers, photos. You could also use videos, anything that just kind of supports your information, not necessarily showing data, but just kind of something that helps to support your information. This is where people normally would have maybe bullets on a PowerPoint. So Canva's saying, hey, instead of bullets, just maybe present it this way. So this is their sample. And this is another example of how they're suggesting to do that. So again, this is straight from Canva, their template. They're saying, hey, if you want to talk about next steps and action items, you could talk about it this way. And then this is, again, kind of in that same category of just supporting your information with visuals. They've got their sales team. So they did their little pitch, and then they were like, thank you. Here's our contact information or whatever it might be. Now, these are not from the Canva templates, the next two, because they didn't have two visual aids that we talk about a lot in public speaking, which are the flow chart. Well, I don't know that we talk about them a lot, but we do talk about them. The flow chart, and then there's another one right after this. So the flow chart, if you are doing a process speech, so I know the folks that are with us in here are not currently taking public speaking. They're just maybe presenting in other avenues of their professional lives. But the folks online, I know some of my students as well, we particularly in my class, we don't do a process speech, but many public speaking classes here at Wake Tech and also in other institutions will do a process speech where you kind of take someone through the stages of how to create something. So one that's we use all the time as an example of this is how to give a dog a bath. So in that situation, you would want to kind of have, you could potentially use here are the steps. Step 1, step 2, so on. Steps in a process. This one I included because it is something that we teach in public speaking, but I don't know that I've ever seen a presentation with an org chart, actually. Have any of you?
Maybe not a presentation.
I'm just gonna close that a tiny bit. Yeah, we see these a lot in the professional world, but we may not actually use these as often. But if you did have to present, let's say you were presenting for your job and you had to outline who was going to be in charge of a project and who would report to who in the project, you might use something like that. All right, I didn't tell you there was going to be a quiz. Now, for those of you that are here, if you want to, you can grab a pen and a Post-it note, but you don't have to. This is really not that formal. Those of you who are on Teams, if you want to, you could, if you want to just put your thoughts in the chat, or if you want to just kind of jot down your answers on your own scrap paper or at home, wherever you are, you're welcome to do that. Again, it's really not formal. It's just, we're just kind of, this is a learning by doing example, because I just presented a bunch of information, but I know for me as a learner, I'm not going to remember that if I don't have to apply it in some way. So, okay, so in this quiz on this side, A, B, C, D, E, F are the types of visual aids that we just talked about. And on this side are when you might, or what you might want to use that visual aid for. So these obviously do not match up just straight across. So what you can write down is sort of, do you think A matches with 5 or B with 1 or whatever you think would be the correct match for these. All right, those of you on the Teams chat, if you're brave, you can put your answers in the chat. I think I'm following it on my phone. I don't know if I can see everything in there, but you don't have to. You can wait until the answers are shown, then you can say how many you got right if you want to. All right, y'all need any more? You ready to kind of look at the answers, or you need a little more time? You ready? All right. All right, so photographs, drawings, maps, that's when I was telling you kind of the things in the general category. Add detail and clarification to your presentation. Pie graphs show how the parts of an item relate to the whole. Bar graphs are helpful when you're comparing two items. Flowcharts are used to display the steps or stages in a process. Line graphs are usually used to show a trend over time. And org charts are organized according to official work hierarchy. So here are your answers if you want to check them. And I kind of always like to throw in something where the exception proves the rule. So the rule is generally about presentation aids. This is too much text, okay? I would normally not have a presentation with this much text. So I did this just so you could be able to have sort of the answer key. And this PowerPoint is in the chat, so all of you have access to it through your calendar. But normally I would not do this because it's too much, and especially for people all the way in the back, they may not even be able to see this very well. So this is kind of an example of what not to do, but I still did include it. All right, so part 2, which one and why game? It's all right, no, it's fine. Sometimes you do have, you'll see if you go to a presentation, you'll look at something of like, that graph is way too complicated, or, I mean, maybe I'm the only one who does this, but you might, no, I'm not, okay, so maybe some of you are also thinking like, why are they using that? And sometimes they will use something where it's really, they aren't able to explain everything, but there's a reason, there's a purpose for them using it because they're going to highlight 1 or 2 things. And actually, if we have time, I'll show you, Canva has just kind of come out with a new way, or I've learned somehow, I think it was from Canva, how to kind of highlight a particular part. If you're using a whole chart or visual and you only just want to highlight a part of it, how to do that. So if we have time, I'll show you. All right, so I told you, we're very active in this presentation. Now we're going to play the which one and why game. So if you are on Teams, you can put your answer. Your answer is either going to be 1, 2, or 3. And if you're here in person, you can either hold up 1, 2, or 3 fingers. And this is just which one you like better. I'm going to show you a series of 3 visuals. You're going to pick which one you like the best. There is no right answer. Part of why I'm doing this is because I am hoping that it'll kind of show us that we don't all have the exact same feeling about what we see visually, right? We know that from art. Like, we don't all love the exact same pieces of art. So, but there may be some principles that we kind of talk about as we go through these that may hold true for all presentations. So, which one and why? All right, here's option 1. This is for presenting new sales goals. Option 1. You're going to feel like you're at the eye doctor for a minute. A or B? 1 or 2? All right, option 1, option 2, option 3. Option 3 is 2 slides. Would be presenting part of the goals on one slide and then part of the goals on another slide. All right. Do you need to see the options again?
Yeah.
And Dr. Mercer, are you able to go back and show the options again as well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right. So we'll look at those like the eye doctor. 1, 2, and 3. All right, so hold up which one you like the best, 1, 2, or 3. All right, and if you're on Teams, if you'll put that in the chat. And Dr. Mercer, do we have a kind of...
We have a 2, we have a couple of 1s, a 3, kind of all over the board here.
Yeah, great. I was hoping that, because what I was hoping to show you all by doing this is that we don't all prefer things in the same way. I would probably personally pick 3 because I think it's a lot of text. Even with breaking it into 2 slides, I think it's a lot of text. But this is another example of when you might have more text because of the type of presentation it is. So maybe later you need to send out the PowerPoint and it needs to have the sales goals in it. But I do like, this is what Canva, number 1 is what Canva proposed. That's their template. So I like that as well. But yeah, for some people it's, yeah. So if you preferred 1, what did you like about 1?
For me, it's just easy to visualize and read, and I don't know, it's spaced out nice and neat, and I don't really like the, I don't know, I like
The
the
linear,
kind
you like
of,
it
the
more?
linear, yeah, it's
Yeah.
more the spread out, yeah, I don't know.
Mhm.
Just, for me, it's just easier to digest.
That is a great point. If it's not linear, which is what we're used to, it actually can help to draw your audience's attention because they're used to seeing a list of bullet points. So now their brain is kind of like, oh, okay. But I would say, and we're going to talk more about sort of principles, but this is a good time to mention, if you were presenting this as your new sales goals and it is in this format that's a little different from what people are used to seeing, when you first put this slide on, I would just take a few minutes, not a few minutes, I'm sorry, that's way too long. Don't take a few minutes. Take, 10 seconds or, just a little pause because you might need to give people a little chance to kind of have their brains assimilate what is going on in this because there is a lot going on. So reasons to use it and reasons not to use it. All right, what about 2? Some of you, anybody like 2 want to share and on Teams? You can either unmute or you could put it in the chat if you want to share.
Just back to number 1 for a second. We did have someone in the chat mention also something about the spacing as well, liking the spacing.
Okay.
I know I would have said color. Like the colors to me would get my attention, keep my attention.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Mercer, and for those of you in the chat. All right, so nobody is giving me any reasons why they might like number 2 necessarily. Oh, did you like it, Hannah?
I like this one because I like the whole picture, like every detail, but that's also like my learning style. So back to what you had mentioned.
Yeah, you like to just be able to read through it, then you've got it. Yeah, cool. And some people really like. For me, it's a lot of text, and it's especially if you were far in the back. But again, some people might prefer just clean, simple. And then those of you who like number 3 the best. maybe those of us who we like that linear style, but we like to have the font big maybe. What did y'all like?
The size,
Yeah.
the size of the font.
Mhm.
And plus, it just seems like it's not cluttered.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from the teams, folks?
And well, we still had answers for number 2 here. They liked it because it was straight to the point, it was neat, and it was organized. No thoughts on number 3 yet.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, so next options. All right, you ready? Again, your channel, you're at the eye doctor. If you haven't been to the eye doctor, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But all right, so option 1. This is for next steps and action items. You'll recognize this. It came straight from the Canva template. All right, here's another option. Option 2, using the next steps and action items as a timeline. Quarter 1, 2, 3, 4. Option 3, the timeline, but with a lot of different fonts and visuals. Okay, want to look at those again? So, and Dr. Mercer, if you could kind of go through them too, if you can. So option 1, option 2, option 3. So those of you here, you want to, okay, and in the chat, you can put what you prefer. Okay, good. All right, so I like that we've got, for the most part, we are saying different things. I don't think anyone here is saying 3. Did anybody on Teams say 3, Dr. Mercer?
Yeah, we have 1 3.
Okay. All right, well, let's go through these and kind of talk about what we liked. All right. That's what I thought too. But see, that's the whole point of this. We all have different preferences. So who liked number 1 the best? Okay, yeah. Maybe because it's designed by professional graphic designers at Canva. I don't know.
Just more detail,
Yeah. It's clean. It's pretty. I think the font is a little small, personally. But otherwise, yeah. Anything else? Yeah. It looks very professional, doesn't it? Anybody on Teams thoughts on 1?
One, let's say, easier to process.
Mm-hmm.
That number 1 is easier to process.
Yeah, and that is a great point because I like number 2 for the font size, but you make a great point in on Teams. It is you would need a minute to figure out that this is quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4. Now, if you were in a company and organization that used this as a standard template for communicating the timeline of projects, that might be something where everybody kind of has an organizational understanding of this is how we're going to display our plans. And then it would be nice to kind of be able to see that you can see these a little bit more. The font is not as small. What do y'all think about either 1 or 2?
I don't mind this one.
Yeah. Two. I don't want to get bored, right? So I like to be able to have to track, right,
Yeah.
and follow, and it keeps me busy. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has good visual balance. There's, kind of a consistent style used around. It's kind of not really shoved on one side versus the other. It's kind of right down the middle.
Mm-hmm. It does kind of, your eye kind of goes in different places, so it's a little bit visually interesting. Yeah, great point. All right, good. And then 3. Somebody liked it on Teams. Nobody here was a fan, to be honest. Some people here were definitely not fans.
Yeah.
It's too easy.
Don't like the font. Don't like the font.
Yeah, okay, so here, the folks here are saying what they don't like. So we'll talk about what we don't like, and then folks on Teams, you can somebody said they did like it, so we do want to hear what you did like about it. All right, so I also felt like it was, I actually created this as an example of too much. But I also thought somebody will like it, right? Because for somebody, this is what they want, something that's really visually interesting. It is not boring. We can definitely say that about this one. So what did you not like here, people here? Because I know some of y'all did not like it. Lee, I thought you said.
Yeah, the font for the border, I don't particularly care for the font
Yeah.
for those border words. And to me, while I like the visuals, it seems like they almost get in the way a little bit. I say.
These little extra. Yeah, we've got a few extra little graphic images that are kind of stuck in there that really aren't as meaningful, maybe.
Yeah, that's why I said it's too busy, and then like some PowerPoints, you don't need a whole lot of pictures and stuff like that. You know, we either do one or the other. And
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of stuff going on, different fonts. and different
Well, that's why
pictures.
we're using open house this weekend, so.
And somebody, hey, whoever loves it is going to love it because somebody said that 3 was their favorite. So there you go. Did
It's too busy for me.
Yeah, I hear you. So Teams chat, what do y'all think? Did Dr. Mercer, did somebody say what they thought, or does somebody want to unmute?
Yes.
Okay.
And she said she liked the color and that it catches her attention.
Yeah. So if you were sitting in a presentation and you're feeling like this is going to go on forever, it's very boring, whatever it might be, then this might be something where you're like, okay, let me figure out what's going on here. So, okay, yeah. All right. How about this one? Here's the sales team. Y'all saw this from the Canva template example. So this is how they used it, how Canva did a presentation of visuals of the sales team. Okay, here's option 2. Oh, let me go back. Option 1. Option 2, they personalized it a little bit. They had their own fonts. They had their own little icon that goes along with them. Olivia likes a dog. Reese likes to travel. Juliana likes soccer, I think. Or no, is that volleyball? Oops.
You don't need no.
Took me a minute.
It was a roll of yard.
All right, people on Teams, my class is cutting up. All right, so we got, let me show you those again. All right, option 1, option 2, option 3. Oh, I hadn't gotten to 3 yet, sorry. Here's 3, very plain. All right, option 1, 2, or 3, what do y'all think here? Okay, 1, 2, possibly 1 or 2. How about on Teams?
Somebody actually had a good tip here about how the presentation kind of goes back to who your audience is. And so while some of these might, appear one way to one audience, there could be an audience for, like for example, in the last group for number 3. So far, we've noted mostly number 1, it looks like, in this set. That is the most popular. There's a comment that option number 2 looks unprofessional and immature.
And it's interesting because some people did like number 2. And if you did, actually, let's kind of go back through. So number 1, if you like this, what did you like about it?
I like visuals, faces, and
Face with a name?
See, first I like a face with a name.
Clean, simple. Okay. If you liked number 2, what did you like about this one?
I think I just like to this would make someone smile.
Yeah. This has got a little more personality.
Yeah.
So what the person in the chat, whoever said that, great point that you made, it really has to do with the purpose. So if you had a meeting with your department and y'all are a close team and you're saying, congratulations to the sales team of the month or something like that, or if you wanted to kind of highlight different people on your team and what their interests were, that might be a neat way to do something like that. So again, it does come down to the purpose, and that is appealing to some people, not to other people's. So,
I just want
yeah.
to make a comment.
Go ahead.
Sometimes less is more because, like at this day and time, this internet and all this stuff, that could be a little bit too much of, a recipe for stalkers or anybody, anything.
Yeah.
So probably if you just go by the names, it'll probably be the best thing. But
So
but
option 3.
I do like this, visual, like the face of a name though. But still, I would put all that extra stuff that I like and all that stuff because people narrow down and try to,
Yeah,
this stuff, business is already out there, so you don't want to give them more than they have to have.
that is a fabulous point because that's another example of how the purpose, how you craft your visual depends on the purpose. So if the purpose is something that's going to go out on a public website, you might want to go with option 3, even though, did anyone vote for option 3?
No, but I said that
Yeah,
one
but-
or three because
Okay, 1 or 3,
game
yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. So that's a good reason to go with option 3. And it is, again, clean, simple, clear, and maybe not as visually appealing without the picture to go with the name, but there might be a reason for that. That was a great point. I didn't plant that comment, but I wish I had, because that was a great comment that you made. Perfect comment. Teams, folks, anybody want to share any thoughts on that round?
I think there were some similar comments to what's going on in the classroom. Someone said they thought that number one you can use for everything, like it's kind of like all purpose. But mostly it looks like number one was the most popular based on the chat.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so why we did that game was to show you that we all have different preferences, but also there are some kind of common themes that start to emerge of things that most people like. And these are kind of the best practices if you go and do any research, which if you are working on presentations for your class or really anything, it's always, I personally think, a good idea to just kind of Google, see what's out there, see what people are doing, look for ideas about what is appealing to most people when it comes to presentations. These are some sort of best practices or things to keep in mind when you're thinking about creating presentations. Keep it simple, and here, this is I did create this slide, so if you hate it, just don't tell me. But this is, and honestly, if I were doing kind of a animations with PowerPoint, I would probably have these come in as I spoke about them. But the first principle is just to keep it simple, which many of you said as we were talking through our preferences. You know, if it's simple, if it's clean, it's kind of appealing to a lot of people. Consistency. So we were just looking at kind of isolated examples, but when you're creating a whole presentation slide deck, you don't want to have them, you know, one is like a cartoon character, one is more like photographs. You want to try to keep a common design sort of theme going. And if you use programs that have templates, which pretty much all of them do, PowerPoint, Google Slides, they all have templates. Kind of keep that template as you go throughout the presentation so that you have something that is kind of visually uniform and ties everything together. It's easier for your audience to focus on what it is that you're presenting, the actual message, if they're not distracted by the fact that colors are changing, types of imagery is changing. So if it's kind of all a very uniform theme, that can help them to really focus more on the message versus being distracted by other things. Also just makes it look more professional, right? And then this is the most important one, meaningful. So if you, as you're thinking about presentations and visual aids, the most important thing to consider if you're going to put something up on the screen is this meaningful to the audience? If it's just your speaker notes, which I will admit I sometimes, like right now, I put these three up here so I'd remember to talk about these three principles, but I'm not going to put, you know, a paragraph, this whole paragraph that I'm speaking to you, on this screen and then read it to you, because that would not be happy for, none of us would enjoy that. And it wouldn't be very meaningful. At that point, you'd be like, just send me the PowerPoint, I'll just read through it. Like, especially those of us who like to learn by, you know, reading, we'd be like, fine, not a problem. So just three things for you to really kind of keep in mind. All right, we're going to do one more last round of the which, one, and why. One last one as we transition to part 3. So I'm transitioning to part 3 of my PowerPoint presentation based on what I've just told you, what we've just talked about. Which one do you prefer? We're going to go through 1, 2, or 3. There's kind of a right answer on this one for me, but it is, everybody has their own preferences. Okay, so here's option 1 for introducing part 3 of this presentation. Here's option 2 for introducing part 3 of this presentation. And here's option 3 for introducing part 3 of this presentation. So put in the chat your vote 1, 2, or 3. Do you need to see them again? Okay. Option 1, option 2, or option 3. Now, before you give me your answers, not which one you like the best visually this time. Which one is the best choice for me to use in this presentation? So option 1, option 2, option 3. All right. You can hold it up or you can put it in the chat. Okay, most people are saying 3. Anybody say anything else? It's okay if you did. Anybody in the chat, Dr. Mercer?
We only have a couple of answers so far. Oh, we're across the board. We've got 1, we've got 2, we've got 3.
Okay, good. That's good because that gives us something to discuss. So I will tell you that my thought is it should be option 3, and I'll tell you why. So I'm introducing part 3 of this workshop. And this is how I introduced part 2. Okay? So I'm going to kind of introduce each part in a way that's consistent. So I'm keeping that theme. Now, if part 2, if this one and also part 1 had been more in the style of this first option, if they were all kind of this font and a big graphic, that would work. I also I've used this idea before, actually. This is something I would put in a presentation. But I would, if I were introducing part 3 and I hadn't been using a whole screen picture with font in the left side of the screen, then I would stick with option 3, which is consistent. So, okay, any thoughts on Teams or here about choices there or any of that, kind of what we just talked about? Okay. All right. This is part 3. This might be the part you actually came here for. But I made you do some COM 231 course objectives. All right. So I told you we'd talk about tools you can use. How many of you are familiar with PowerPoint? My guess is pretty much everybody.
Too familiar.
How about Google Slides? Anybody use Google Slides? Okay. How about Keynote? Does anyone use Keynote? Keynote is the Apple version. And then Prezi. Has anybody used Prezi? Okay, yeah. So Prezi, the Prezi, for those of you who might not have heard of that one is sort of like a PowerPoint alternative that kind of zooms you into something and then zooms you out and then zooms you into the next thing. So it kind of tries to make it a little bit more active or kind of helps you to feel more like you're diving into the presentation. I think really when Prezi came about, I was excited about it, but I think it was because I was just like, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to do just PowerPoint anymore. But I've kind of stopped using it because for me, at least, it just kind of makes me a little bit dizzy.
Me too.
Does it make you? Yeah, it kind of.
Yeah, pretty bad.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, with Prezi, it kind of, you're kind of moving, but yeah. All right, so these are all common ones that you can get. PowerPoint is not free, but it's free for Wake Tech employees and students. So if you don't have this, see me after class. You need this, and hopefully you're able to get it. You are able to get it through our Wake Tech department, or any faculty member can help you with this, students, because you will need to be able to open PowerPoint and use PowerPoint. I know a lot of you like to use Google Slides. My own children who are in the public school use Google Slides because a lot of K-12 schools are like Google Classroom, that kind of thing. So Google Slides is just like PowerPoint. It's just the version that Google has, yeah. And I think it has maybe some more modern-looking templates, personally, sometimes. But kind of these are all the standard ones. Yes?
So this is basically for projects where you have to have pictures on them, I would think, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any of those kinds of things you could use these for. All right, so these aren't the ones, I just wanted to mention these, but the ones that I wanted to kind of tell you about that you may have been less likely to have heard, maybe you haven't heard of some of these, are Canva, which we talked a little bit about already. And I know Dr. Mercer's familiar with it. Dr. Mercer, was anyone else in the chat familiar with Canva?
No one said.
All right, everybody homework after this workshop. Get a Canva account. You will thank me later. So Canva is a program that is created by graphic designers, but it's free. There's a free version. The way that they make money is that they have certain images that you have to pay to use. However, at the current time, like I said, I've been using it for 7 years, I believe. So I think I got an email saying like, thank you for being one of the first people to use Canva. So I don't know if it was really 7. It might have, I feel like when I was like, have I used it for at least 7 years? Yeah, it might have been more than that, I don't know. But Canva, the way that they started free and they've stayed free. But the way that they're able to do that is because you can pay to use some images. You can pay to put some things in your template. You also, there are some templates that you can only use if you pay. So that's kind of how they do that.
You don't want to use you don't want to pay to use it for an assignment or a project for work.
Right, and I was saying earlier, I've only spent $1 on it. And it was a graphic that I really, really wanted, so it was totally worth $1 to me to
Did you use
spend
it
that.
for work or personal?
It was for work. All right, so Pictochart is another one, and Pictochart is something that is also sort of like Canva, but Pictochart has much more limited free options. So it used to be free, kind of started out like Canva. I think I got on Pictochart around the same time as I got on Canva, but I've now had to start paying Pictochart. It's not a lot because I'm an educator, I get a discount. Students, you can get a discount. But I think it might be like $30 a year, so it's not free, but I've kept it because I have some things I've created in Pictochart. Pictochart is really good for infographics. So if you really need to create an infographic that maybe it's going to be published, and you'll be able to use Pictochart because you'll have usage rights. When part of what you pay for with that subscription is the ability to use all those graphics that you can create in Pictochart. If you're doing this for a class project, I would say more Canva than Pictochart, but if Canva doesn't have what you want, try Pictochart and see. All right, Sway is new. Has anyone used Sway yet?
I've never heard of it. About that?
Yeah. So it's a new Microsoft product, and my guess is that Microsoft is doing Sway because they've kind of realized that people are a little bit tired of PowerPoint. I mean, it's been out there for, I don't even know, 40, 30, I don't know.
For as long as I've been alive.
Yeah, exactly. So Sway is another Microsoft presentation product, so it's something for us to kind of look into. I mentioned it because these are all things that you might not be as familiar with, but you may want to check into. And I also put others up there because I would love to hear from y'all. What do y'all use? If it's Google Slides, PowerPoint, you don't have to tell me, but if you use something other than Canva, Pictochart, or Sway that you really love to create presentation slides.
Is that Camtasia? Is that a part of that kind of stuff?
Camtasia is a lot of video, yeah, if you're creating video or a video presentation, yeah. And some people do also use Camtasia, you're right, for like screen capture, which you might need to do. That's a good one.
I hate to say this, but I use PowerPoint a lot of times because it's easy.
It is easy.
I just believe it's 30, 40 years old, and that's all I've ever known. But again, I'm sure I do use some of these others, but when it comes to like professional, PowerPoint's easy. Isn't that awful?
You know, no, it's not awful, but you know why it's easy to you? Because you've used it.
That's not a good reason.
No, I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, but for people who haven't used anything, when they start using PowerPoint, it's not as intuitive as some other ones. So try Canva, see if you like it. The thing about Canva is, and you know, this may be the case for some others as well, I can present to y'all from the Canva presentation that I made for this workshop, but it's online. So if I don't convert this into PowerPoint, which is what I do, then I could also download a PDF and I could present from the PDF. But I couldn't be sure that I wasn't going to run into an issue with internet access because it's not like a program that you download onto your computer. So that's something to be aware of for sure. Which, did anyone have in the chat any others, Dr. Mercer, to share?
No.
You never know when you're going to discover some new thing. Anybody else here? No? Okay. Well, hopefully I helped you discover one new thing today. All right, here's a couple things just to keep in mind. I just mentioned one with Canva, that if you create your presentation in Canva, you're going to have to either download, you can download all the slides as JPEGs and put them into a PowerPoint, or you can download it as a PDF and present from there. But whatever you do, have a contingency plan. And you'll see I printed out, I've been burned a few times. So I have a contingency plan. If none of our technology had worked today, I would at least have my notes and I would be able to give you that. We would have had to talk about all this without any visuals, which would have been kind of interesting with a visual presentation. Just hold on a second. In a visual aids presentation, if I didn't have a visual aid, but that's just a good rule of thumb. So I've got this. I've emailed myself a PDF version and a PowerPoint version of this presentation. I don't have it on a flash drive because I'm not presenting this at a conference or any big event. I could run back to my office and put it on a flash drive real quick if I needed to, but I'm very familiar with this situation, so I didn't feel like I needed to have it on a flash drive. But if I were presenting in class, COM 231 students, if you're presenting in class, definitely I would have emailed it to myself and also I would have a flash drive. All right, two other things to keep in mind. ADA compliance. I know that's something that probably you're going to be more familiar with if you've had experiences with somebody who might need accommodations. So not all of us have had experience of kind of knowing what types of fonts we should use, what types of descriptions we should use for images. But it's important for us to know that if people need accommodations, like for instance, if I knew that somebody in here was not able to see this visual aid because they had a visual impairment, I would, as I went through each slide, do a quick just a quick overview. I'd say, all right, so we're going to our next slide. It has a picture of some individuals sitting around a table while one person is presenting, and it has three main points. First point is contingency plan. Talk about that. Second point is ADA compliance, and then third point is attribution fair use. So I would try to give the person kind of as much as I could, a picture of what is on the screen. So it's just something to keep in mind. That's another thing to consider. I know some of you prefer kind of the visuals that may have been more interesting, more complex, but those also can make it more difficult for people who have visual impairments. So that's another reason to kind of keep things a little bit more simple, clean, and clear. I'll take questions in just a minute. All right, attribution and fair use is the last thing, and it's so important. Not so much a concern for us at Wake Tech, because unless we're monetizing things, but because for the most part, I'm just using this to share with y'all. I'm not publishing this on the internet. I'm not making any money off of it. When you present things, when you come up with presentation aids for your classes, for your COM 231 class or any other class, and you're creating a PowerPoint, whatever it might be, more than likely, no one is going to come after you and sue you for that. And if they did, we're probably protected because of the purpose of what we're creating, which is educational. But on the other hand, many of you are going to not be in education your whole lives. You're going to be out there having whatever career it is that you have, that you might create materials that are visual aids. And if you're using it, like we had all those examples at the beginning of a sales presentation, if you're giving a sales presentation, if you're publishing anything on the internet, if you're using any type of image for a commercial purpose, something related to making money some way or another, you better make sure that you have permission, because that would not be covered under fair use, which covers educational organizations. So you want to make sure that you have permission. Even educational organizations have been sued because they haven't gotten permission to use images. I think it was an Ivy League school. I can't remember which one. I will probably say the wrong thing if I say, but they put out a massive open online course so anybody could access it, and it had some images in there that they had not gotten permission to use, so they got sued. It's not like often that it would happen, but just cover your bases and make sure that you are using images that you have permission to use and that you're attributing, giving credit to the people who create the image or the source of the image. Now, you'll notice I didn't do that with every image in this presentation, because part of why I like to use Canva is they give me that permission to not have to use their information. And they actually get some of their images from some of these places. I've gone to Pixabay and seen images that are also on Canva. So if you need images that you can use without having to worry about copyright, that kind of thing, usage permissions, here's some places that you can look for those. And I won't go through and read all these because our time is short and I want to give at least a little bit of time for questions, but these are some good sources of places where you can get images that you can use without having to worry that you're doing something illegal or unethical.
It's very hard.
All right, questions?
Just something, I saw your documents, and I thought, do you have those just in case your internet is down or you don't have access to your computer?
This?
Yes.
All right, other questions?
Hey, I got a question, I'm sorry.
That's okay, go right ahead.
Class kind of ran a little late on me, very much randomly late, I was 30 minutes late to the meeting. Am I still being kind of for attendance or is that I understand the presentation was about how to present the presentation and all that stuff. But I got the examples and everything. Am I going to counter for that or is this going to be a legal issue?
I will actually ask our wonderful cameraman. We've got 2 camera people here today. We have Jack Svensgaard, did I say? So Jack Svensgaard, who has been keeping the camera on me for this Teams call. And then Jack, if you could point your camera in the back. Back there we have Sarah Rothman-Rose, who is videotaping this workshop so that we can put it on our Speak Blackboard shell. So the parts of it that you missed, you will be able to go back and view. And if you're doing it for extra credit in my class or somebody else's class, just email your instructor. Because I'm sorry, I don't see your name because I don't see the Teams chat. So.
I'm going to be Mark Picker Coffee for the legal name.
All right. So.
I'm just checking to make sure.
Okay, perfect. So answer your question. You will be able to watch the whole presentation. Any other questions?
I have a comment. You mentioned about how many slides or whatever to put on a presentation and what was too much, how much, what would be a limit if you was to tell someone to do a presentation?
That's a great question. That is something that is not completely, that experts are not completely in agreement on. Because some people will say there's a limit to how many slides you would use, there's a limit to how many words on the slide, and then some people, and actually there's recently an expert at TED, like the TED Talks. I was reading an article on like what makes their presentations so good, and they have somebody who works there who's gotten awards for his presentations, and he has tons of slides because he only has like one idea on each slide. So his slide deck is huge. He's got probably, I don't know, 50 slides, but he just is using one image for one purpose. So I think the answer to your question is kind of what you were saying earlier, Edna, that it depends. It depends on the situation. How are you going to best reach the audience and how are you going to best convey the message? So there isn't, I would say, not a hard and fast rule, but in general, less is better.
What do you mean by less is better? Like when you have less information, less images on a slide?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually we talked about that a little bit earlier in the workshop. So if you watch that video,
I didn't see it.
it'll have. Yeah, you won't, when it comes out, you'll be able to watch it and you'll be able to hear some more about that. And the reason I am stopping there is because it is 1:30 and I know people have places to be, things to do. So you are welcome to grab anything on your way out, those of you who are here. Those of you who are on Teams, thank you so much for joining us. And Dr. Mercer, thank you so much for manning the womaning the chat for us. We really appreciate that. And to everybody who participated. If you're on Teams and you still have questions that I didn't answer, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll go back later and check that. If you're here, I'll be around for a couple minutes as well. So, all right, thanks y'all. I appreciate you being here. And here's my email on the screen as well if you need that.